Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000. We have, in the existing hospital system, 4,000 ventilators. This is just in the normal operation of hospitals, et cetera. We have purchased 7,000, and we are still shopping. Several times, I spoke with him last night, I spoke with him this morning. I've spoken to people in the White House who are handling these operations. I've spoken with the Vice President. I've spoken with Jared Kushner, who is a New Yorker. He knows New York. And he's working in the White House, and he's been extraordinarily helpful on all of these situations. What we're working on is a common challenge. No one has these ventilators, and no one ever anticipated a situation where you would need this number of ventilators to deal with a public health emergency. So we have purchased everything that can be purchased. We're now in a situation that we're trying to accelerate production of these ventilators, and a ventilator is a complicated piece of equipment. The president and his team, I think, are using the DPA well because it's basically a leverage tool when you're dealing with private companies, right? We need your help, we can demand your help, or you could agree to help, and we need you to step up and increase production. Even with that, there's a ramp-up time for a company to put together the supply chain, put together the workforce, and get these things up and running. So Ford, you hear, is going to help. General Motors is going to help. The problem is our timeline is so short. We're looking at an apex 21 days in that range that are dealing with it. I brought down a shipment to New York City yesterday. Today, no hospital, no nurse, no doctor can say legitimately, I don't have protective equipment. Right now, and for the foreseeable future, we have a supply. We do not yet have secured a supply for 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, but we are still shopping. And taking care of this immediate need was also good news and a good job by the team. And again, we are still shopping for more equipment. Federal government has sent 4,000. We're exploring splitting, where one ventilator could do 2 patients. Italy has had to do this because they were forced to do it. I want to see if we can study it and do it a little smarter and have a little more time experimenting with it. But we're looking at splitting the ventilators. We're still working with the federal government to try to find more ventilators. But that is our single greatest challenge, are the ventilators. Again, the ICU beds, that really means a ventilated bed. Because, again, this is the number one piece of equipment that we need. You have beds, you have equipment, you need staff, and you need staff understanding that some staff is going to get sick and they're going to be out. So we have been working on putting together a surge healthcare force. Go back to the retirees, go back to...
I think those of you who heard the town hall, we are continuing to accelerate testing at a record rate. We now have 370,000 tests that have been done. The majority of those, over 220,000 in the last 8 days, which those of you who have been tracking the South Korea numbers put us equivalent to what they did in 8 weeks that we did in 8 days. This was made possible because of the HHS team working together, bringing together the strength of the FDA with the CDC and under the leadership of Secretary Azar. We're very proud of those numbers, but we know that we have to do more, and we continue to accelerate in testing to ensure that those who need the test are tested first and have access. As we talked about yesterday, we're working on the ability for people to take their own sample. That does not mean home testing. That means taking your own sample in the front of your nose with available swabs into normal saline that can be transported to the laboratories. That will allow and free up all of the drive-thrus to be very sparing on PPE, because you'll be able to do that with gloves rather than the full PPE outfits. This will allow for more of that PPE to be dedicated to our hospitals. I think those of you who are tracking this epidemic closely, like I am, you will begin to see that there is encouraging results coming out of Italy. We are impressed by the decreases that are seen in mortality, the number of people succumbing to this illness, and the number of new cases. Our new cases will continue to surge because we're still working on our backlog, although we will be in touch with the laboratories after this press conference to really find out how many are still in backlog and how many were run in the last 24 hours. Until we can get into a 24-hour cycle, we're going to have disproportional number of new cases compared to the actual new cases, and we will let you know when we've reached that equilibrium. Finally, and I know Dr. Fauci will talk about this further, we remain deeply concerned about New York City and the New York metro area. About 56% of all the cases in the United States are coming out of that metro area, and 60% of all the new cases are coming out of the metro New York area, and 31% of the people succumbing to this disease. It means, because they still are at the 31% mortality compared to the other regions of the country, that we can have a huge impact if we unite together. This means, as in all places, they have to be following the presidential guidelines that were put out 8 or 9 days ago, and this will be critical. But to everyone who has left New York over the last few days, because of the rate of the number of cases, you may have been exposed before you left New York. And I think, like Governor DeSantis has put out today, everybody who was in New York should be self-quarantining for the next 14 days to ensure that the virus doesn't spread to others, no matter where they have gone, whether it's Florida, North Carolina, or out to far reaches of Long Island. We are starting to see new cases across Long Island that suggest people have left the city. So this will be very critical that those individuals do self-quarantine in their homes over these next 14 days to make sure they don't pass the virus to others based on the time that they left New York. So if they've already are 4 days out, then it's just 10 more days. So I thank you if you help get that message out to others.